All right, welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Fellow Show. I'm your host, the fellow KGB. We are joined tonight by John Heffernon. We've got Drake Sanford in the bottom there, and we're just going to be hanging out. We're doing our mid-season awards show. We're going to actually talk like real awards, and then we'll probably add some names for like fantasy awards. So super exciting. What's going on, John? How you going?
Hey, doing well. Gonna nominate myself for Fantasy Coach of the Year. Just giving you guys a little tidbit of what we'll be talking about later.
I didn't even think about that as one of our categories, but that'll be something for the end. But Drake, what's going on, man?
I mean, if that's a category, there's no way John's winning it at this point. But honestly, guys, we're almost to the All-Star break. We've had half a basketball season. That's amazing. I'm just happy that we're at this point. We're still talking fantasy basketball. John's got that beautiful painting behind him.
Life is good.
We're all feeling great today.
Baseball is a month away,
and baseball is here. JJ Watt signing with the Cardinals. Kyle is wearing a blazer. I mean, how could we not be happy here, guys?
I think we're doing pretty well for ourselves over here. So
it's a great day.
All-Star game is next Saturday.
Sunday.
I
believe it's this Sunday.
This Sunday.
And then
it's this weekend, though. It's this upcoming weekend.
Yeah.
And then
are they doing the skill stuff on Saturday, or are they just doing it all on Sunday?
I thought it was all the same day. I thought it was all the same day.
Sunday? Okay.
I thought. That's what I heard. I don't even know if it's
I think you're correct. I think I heard that. I think you're right, John.
But I believe games pick up. Well, Thursday is the last day for regular season games of our fantasy schedule, and then they pick up on Tuesday, I believe, maybe Wednesday. I can't recall, but anyways, I guess we're gonna start. Like, I really don't have too much stuff. Like, we can pull up and look at some of the standings and stuff, but I don't know who I want to throw to first. Like, should we start with MVP or should we start with like some of the more not exciting categories? Like, should we start with Coach of the Year? John, what do you want to call out first?
They always start with the crappy awards first, right? They always announce MVP last, so we should follow that. I don't care what order before MVP, but we should exclamation point it with the MVPs.
I kind of have off the wall, and I kind of mentioned to you before we went live, but the most disappointing maybe player or most disappointing team of the year. I don't know if you guys have something that comes to mind right away, but most disappointing team of the year.
Got to be. Can I interrupt? I'm sorry. So, John and I both lived in Minnesota together. He got a little less engrossed in the Minnesota fans, but the Timberwolves have to be by far the most disappointing team in the league right now. This is a team that traded a top 3 protected pick for this year, because last year when they made that trade for D'Angelo, so they didn't even have to give up their first last year, which ended up being the first overall, Anthony Edwards. So you have Karl Anthony Towns, you have Jarrett Culver, you brought back Rubio, you have just all this, crazy talent, Anthony Edwards, D'Angelo Russell, and
Beasley.
They're 7-28. Yeah, Malik Beasley. And they're 7-28. It's just they have to be by far. And now you're looking at next year. It's only a top 3 protected pick. That doesn't mean much. I'm a Cavs fan. We've been in the top 1 or 2 plenty of times and got number 5. So it's not a guarantee. You, to be honest, you actually have a better chance of getting the 4 or 5 than you do the 1, 2, or 3. Mm-hmm. So it's a bad situation in Minnesota right now, and I don't know. They have these stars. I would like John to tell me, what can Minnesota do right now?
Minnesota's in trouble, man. They're really in trouble. I think everything hinges around Towns, and he's had one of, arguably the worst years of any player in the NBA right now this year. And I guess going back to last year, I think his mother passed away from COVID within the past few months. He, I think, just recently dealt with COVID himself, or he's been injured this season. I know he's missed a large amount of games this season. I wish I could tell you why, but when he's not going, this team's not going. And then on top of that, Russell got hurt. I think before Russell got hurt, he was playing fine, but I wasn't blown away by him. He wasn't moving the needle in the direction this team needed him to. Beasley's overachieved, but he's a horrible human being, and I don't want to talk about him anymore. And Anthony Edwards has been a rookie phenom. You know, it's just not enough to hold the fort down amidst all the chaos. Cat's back now, but too little too late in a brutal Western Conference. This team needs to trade players to improve, and I just don't know what is attractive on this roster. Maybe Russell. I don't think they want to move on from Cat, so I think Russell's probably the only piece they have to play with, and I don't know what
You
you're
can't
getting
move
for him.
Russell because that's Cat's boy. So
if they're going to move,
I would agree. Yeah, I don't think they're going to, and I don't think they want to.
I think they're kind of stuck.
That's how I feel. That's how I
you
feel.
have the sixth overall pick last year, Jarrett Culver. I think he's getting 12 minutes a game or something like that at this point.
If you're going to move a guy, though, isn't it Beasley? I know he's got a suspension going on right now, but he'd be the one person that you could maybe get something for that isn't in their long-term plans.
Yeah, I don't.
Rubio, probably bounce Rubio too. Bounce Rubio and Malik Beasley.
Rubio even came out yesterday, I believe it was. He had his article with The Athletic where he was discussing the Timberwolves and how they just aren't doing, the simple things. They're making the same mistakes over and over again. And basically he said, which I think everyone can agree with, you can't restart a system in the middle of an NBA season. I mean, they fired their coach, which needed to happen, but that needed to happen before the season. So now you got a new coach and you're basically just going to ride this out. If you're the T-Wolves, there's no fixing this right now. Maybe in the offseason, but
yeah, it's bad.
I feel like Timberwolves fans have heard that too many times. It's just, where do you go from here?
So I put it in the chat room, the most disappointing NBA teams go.
Yeah.
And someone hit on one of my teams both of these teams came to mind. It's the Wizards and the Hawks. And I'll start with the Hawks real quick, just because I figured they're a top 8 team in the Eastern Conference with Trae Young, John Collins, Clint Capella, Deandre Hunter, and Cam Reddish, and Kevin Huerter, and they have all these young pieces. You thought they're going to put it together, but they're still a sub 500 team. They're 14-20 at the halfway point here, so that's pretty disappointing to me. They're still got a lot of good fantasy assets, but it's not coming together in terms of wins. And then Washington Wizards, I know they've had a weird season with COVID and just getting Russell Wilson and Bradley Beal and all these pieces, and losing Thomas Bryant. So the Wizards have been pretty disappointing. Those will probably be the top 2 for me in the Eastern Conference. And if I had to throw one out in the Western Conference, they're starting to play better, but it's the Mavericks. I know they're on an 8-2. The last 10 games are 8-2, but if you would have asked me 2 weeks ago who one of the most disappointing teams are, I would have said Dallas. But now they've kind of redeemed themselves lately. But any thoughts on the Hawks and the Wizards? Can they compete with Minnesota for the most disappointing team, or is it Minnesota's job?
I think the Hawks are given a little bit of a pass, mostly because of the injuries that they kind of sustained. The whole first half of this season, it's been on and off. I was super surprised the Hawks fired their coach. Again, that was just my reaction was kind of that the Hawks have sustained, this kind of injury bug, and they might get it together. This is the East. I mean, they're 3 games out right now, or 2 games out. So I thought the Hawks thing, I guess they're definitely disappointing. And last year, I think they were disappointing. You had this young crew running, they looked good, and then it never went anywhere. So I would agree. I don't think they're more disappointing. The Wizards actually, last week we were talking about the Wizards. They kind of brought it together. They're 7-3 in the last 10. So I can't be disappointed with what they're doing now. They're figuring their stuff out. It's Russell Westbrook and Beal show. And so
but I was going to say, Aiden put it in the chat room. This is a team that I forgot to mention was the Pelicans in the West. All the talent in the world with Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson. Steve Adams is still there. You got Lonzo, and they're underperforming too. I figured they would at least be, somewhere into this play-in playoff game here, but they're sitting at 15-19.
Have you guys watched? I feel like I've been able to watch Pelicans games like the last week and a half. I've probably seen 3. And Lonzo Ball, I feel like they've pulled back that they want to trade him because he is a huge piece in this offense. And
Zion loves Lonzo.
Yes,
I can guarantee you that. I can guarantee you.
he fits with this offense so well, and the guy can just pull up, hit threes like it's nothing too.
He's shooting now, yeah. His shooting
percentage
has changed his entire value proposition. I love it.
Let's hear John's take on the Pelicans.
Well, the Pelicans I feel like they're one of my more disappointing teams. They're not my most disappointing team. I thought with Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, and Lonzo, they'd go through the roof this year because I thought all of those guys would take a jump, and really only Lonzo and Zion did. So I think Brandon's still playing great, so it's not like he's underperforming significantly. It's just I don't know what the hell's going on when you have that much elite young talent and theoretically useful veterans. I guess they just can't shoot the ball. I mean, that's their only biggest problem is probably the thing that the modern NBA does the best right now, and that's shoot the three-pointer. So maybe that is truly what's holding them back. But I think they're a lot of fun, but I'm disappointed in them. I don't know. I wish they could figure it out. I wish they could win games. I mean, let's be honest. They're on national TV all the time, and I think they're probably deserve to be on national TV. They're that entertaining to watch. It's just they can't turn it into wins. So I'm not exactly sure what the missing ingredient there is, but they're close. I think they're close. I think next year they're a playoff team, and I think after that, sky's the limit. And based on Zion's jumper, which I have some confidence in.
Let's get this team into the play-in game.
Yeah.
Let's get the Pelicans into that play-in this year.
They were so entertaining last year. They implemented the play-in rules. They implemented the play-in specifically for Zion. They loved Zion so much. They're like, how can we get this child into the playoffs? But
this is this squad, Josh Hart, Eric Bledsoe. What is Jackson Hayes up to? Maybe let's play him a little, Van Gundy. Let's create the wall with Jackson Hayes a little. I don't know.
I don't think Willie Hernangomez can dunk, and I know Jackson Hayes can dunk.
Yes,
so just when you have Lonzo in the game, let's play with the centers that can dunk the ball, please.
So my only thought,
little Willie is playing too much. That's what we've.
My only thought was, you said you didn't know what was the missing ingredient, and I think it's experience. You look at Zion, Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball.
Yeah.
These guys have experience winning in the NBA, and I mean they're 15 and 19. Like if they were any worse, we'd have a big problem with it. But they're not really expected to win yet. I think they're still trying to figure each other out and hit a stride. But it's not going to surprise me if they go on a little win streak here in the second half of the season as they get things rolling. So this is, for me, it's a team to keep an eye on. I know the West is just super stacked. I don't know how they're going to hop.
Do we think the Pelicans maybe make a trade here, grab another shooter or something? Are they a team open to moving some pieces?
Go get Malik Beasley.
Oh no.
I mean, if Bledsoe and Adams aren't on the table, I don't know what the hell.
Can you
who's
move
who's their GM again? They have a fun GM, don't they?
They have Griffin, David Griffin.
Yeah. If Griffin's not on the phone every day trying to make a trade with Bledsoe and or Adams to improve in some capacity, then he didn't figure his job out yet.
Yeah.
So this was a fun question. So our most disappointing teams, I think we're all going to agree that the Timberwolves have just had a weird year. Everything's just going against them. But we're going to throw in the Pelicans as a team. Maybe the Hawks will give them a pass for some of the injuries. And then the Wizards are starting to play better. But I think it's pretty clear that it's the Timberwolves just getting the short end of the stick for the most part. So I guess our next category, John, do we want to talk coaches? Do we want to talk maybe most improved defensive?
Let's do the coach quick. Because this is especially given the nature of fantasy, this is a silly one. But I do have a vote for fantasy coach of the year just as much as I do regular coach of the year. I'm going to hit you guys with my regular first, Quinn Snyder for the Jazz. I think that's pretty much a layup. At this point, if the Jazz finish the season, especially in the Western Conference, with the number one overall record, I just feel like that's a guarantee Quinn Snyder wins Coach of the Year. I don't even know if I agree with that or not. Right now, I absolutely do. His record is massively ahead of
Quinn Snyder should have been Coach of the Year last year. Let's be honest. I thought Quinn Snyder was coach of the year last year, so he's definitely coach of the year this year.
And just looking at the roster, it's like how are they 3 games up in the West?
Yeah, dude.
I mean, they're just a very well put together and coached team. It's just a good fit. You have all these guys that are good, and you don't, I don't even think you can, Donovan Mitchell's maybe gets into that great category, but you just look at this list. It's just really good basketball players in a good system. And I think that's how the Jazz operate, and that's how they've been operating the last few years. Eric Spoelstra came out, was it a couple days ago, and said, the whole NBA is surprised about the Jazz, but none of us are. I mean, we saw this coming. This was just a very good team building up.
Yeah, they have 7 players with 20 or more fantasy points, and then the next closest is Favors with 18 per game. Like they're balling out.
Do the Jazz need to add anything, do you think, John, to make this a more favorable West? Does this team beat the Lakers?
Well, not in the playoffs, but
right.
they're gonna have home court advantage though, perhaps, especially if the Davis injury goes far beyond the All-Star break.
Right.
So I think, is there any other coach that can come close? I do have one.
Tyronn Lue and Doc Rivers are 2 coaches that could easily come close, and I think there's more that could emerge. My fantasy coach of the year is the Nets coach Steve Nash, and he is quickly emerging as a real coach of the year. Simple reason for fantasy coach of the year is 3 players in the top 10 fantasy points per game. I mean, that's crazy. That's so much. The volume that those stars are putting up and being on the same team is nuts.
So I think I had Nash as my fantasy coach of the year, but Doc Rivers is kind of a second place for me for Quinn Snyder. It depends on how the rest of the year goes.
I feel like Doc's gotten his accolades. I just let's give it to Quinn. That's
Has Quinn ever gotten one?
No.
Undeservedly
too. I mean, like I said.
So
you guys will disagree with me, but
no, as long as does it? What if the team finish second in the West? Is he still the coach of the year?
I think from a voter standpoint, it's going to be very key for the Jazz to be that 1 seed for Quinn Snyder to get coach of the year.
Yeah, expectations have been set. If they falter from those expectations, I think that could be a challenge for him to win the award, even with an impressive as hell number 2 record.
I have a dark horse for you guys. What about the Suns coach Monty Williams? They're 22-11. I don't think people expected the Suns. People expected good things from the Suns, but not to be 4th in the West at the All-Star break. He's a dark horse.
I thought the Suns would be 4 or 5. I thought they would be on the fringe of home court round 1.
Okay.
They coming off the bubble, how they performed, Aiden and Booker, and then you had Chris Paul, Jaw Crowder. I didn't necessarily think they'd be 4 or 5, but I definitely thought they'd be in that mix. I think a disappointing team, like we talked about, are the Mavericks and Pelicans. I thought they'd be tossed into there. What do we think of the Warriors?
They're kind of.
Is this what is this team? They
Curry.
got Curry back, so
it's
why
Curry.
aren't they winning more?
They have no one else. Curry has shown time and again he needs a team to be a competitive. He needs players around him to be competitive. He can't do it on his own. And who can? Very, very few can.
No, LeBron. I mean,
yeah, LeBron only did it on his own like 3
but he still
times.
needs help.
Only like 3 times.
Yeah,
that's not that many.
I'm assuming Golden State's a first-round exit this year, whether it's the Jazz, Lakers, Clippers that they're going to face up. But
I don't think the Warriors probably make the playoffs this year. They're not giving me playoffs vibes.
Well, they'll be in the play-in playoffs, so they'll probably match up maybe with Dallas or what if it? I would love to see Warriors Pelicans in the play-in game, the play-in tournament. I think that'd be a good.
Since we're looking at this, we're talking about disappointing teams. Sacramento Kings, 1-9 in the last 10. What?
Oh,
what?
You guys, I had a crazy thought. I had a crazy thought. Warriors. Steph versus Zion for the one of the play-in games. games.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That could be fun, right?
That's-
Wow,
We want 2
that's
games.
not
of that.
that's within the realm of possibility right now.
It's right there. Yeah.
Totally in there. So I think that covered our coaching category here. I kind of had an itinerary that I posted on the comments. So
All right.
the thing that I want to cover next is sixth man, because I don't think you can talk about coach of the year being Quinn Snyder. Snyder. But the sixth man it's got to be Jordan Clarkson, right? Is there anybody else that comes close to Jordan Clarkson as sixth man of the year right now? Maybe Chris Boucher. He starts a lot of games, I think, for Toronto with some of the injuries. But for me, it's Jordan Clarkson. I don't think it's close.
Can we do our next show from Utah?
I'd be down. Robbie's moving to Utah, and we could go visit him.
I think Jordan Clarkson's kind of the clear choice right now.
I don't see why not. I mean, it makes a lot of sense to me. Also, doesn't like Jingles or someone else like good come off the bench for them? I mean,
Jingles has been so hot recently. It's insane.
Yeah, they're the new Clippers. They have multiple candidates for sixth man of the year, I think. Especially like if they keep that number one record, you know, like okay, maybe Clarkson is the clear number one right now, but does Jingles start? I don't think he does, right? I think he comes off the bench for O'Neal and or Bogdan.
I wonder if Mike Conley's injury is going to ruin Clarkson's sixth man of the year, because I think he's starting because of Mike Conley, right?
Yeah, that's Jingles is going to win by the clerical error there.
Looking on the depth chart here, they do list Jordan Clarkson here, so they're starting Bogdan, O'Neal, Mitchell,
maybe Harrell. Is Harrell another guy? Montrez. Does he get a little six man love?
His stats are pretty lame, but he does get so much media like national attention and so much like his energy gets hyped up so much. He's great. I don't know if he's six man.
He's starting now as well.
No, I think Gasol has been. Yeah. Why have they not signed Cousins yet?
Why hasn't he been signed by anyone? Is a good question.
It's a great question.
I thought it was for sure the Lakers were just gonna do it right away and get it done with.
Did you guys?
Yeah, I kind of did too.
Do you guys have a fantasy sixth man of the year? Because I do. I'm totally biased when I say.
Can I ask you if
what's a fantasy
qualifications are? Yeah, what are the qualifications for this award?
Qualifications are you can't be a starter, but the man puts up points. Doesn't have to be on a good team. He just has to be a quality person that does not start, but he puts up hella points for fantasy. And to me, that's Terrence Ross. He's a guy that's criminally underowned in fantasy, I believe.
But I think he's like definitely in the talk for actual sixth man of the year too.
He's probably like fifth or sixth.
Yeah,
Ross is a great candidate for this for both sides. Yeah, I love it.
And then side question here, but we've got Lucius asking us a question here.
What do you guys think about Miles Turner being a fantasy sixth man of the year?
Turner? He comes off the bench.
Yeah, he doesn't always start.
Who do they start?
You have to like start like less than half your games or some shit to qualify. So
there's a tier. So they list him as a starter right now. So it depends on how many games he actually ends up.
Yeah, and it depends what they do with Dougie, Lamb, and Sabonis.
Dougie and that chipped tooth, man. That's oh my god.
And TJ Warren, by the way, if anyone's a TJ Warren owner, drop him. He's not playing in the fantasy year. Guarantee it.
But
he might play in the playoffs. I have no idea. But he's not playing in your fantasy season this year.
At this point, the Pacers, are they even in the playoffs?
Yes. They're in the East.
They're 15 and 18.
They're right there.
They're going to be in that category there. But I got a question in the chat room from Lucius asking, I keep hearing Thad Young is going to get traded. You guys hear anything? I haven't personally heard anything, but that's a great person for a team to acquire that needs to make a move, because my head immediately goes to Tom Thibodeau.
Yeah, it's the Knicks, right? The Knicks are going to get that, yeah.
He's got the connections, I think. But
why does Thibodeau need all of the power forwards? What is he doing with them?
Needs to make the playoffs and then like
of a bunch
destroy
Just
the rest of
Thad
the team.
Young's just another player for him to play in front of Obi Toppin.
Yes.
To make
38
sure
minutes a
Toppin gets
game.
no minutes.
Derrick Rose on his last cartilage, 41 minutes a game.
No wonder Obi Toppin was the first to commit to the dunk contest. He's so fresh. He's not playing any games.
He's like, I've not played basketball in a while, guys. Thank you. So I think, good point. The Knicks, maybe the Heat. Maybe the Heat are. It's a very low contract with Thad Young. So I would start looking at these teams that are kind of in that desperation. I need to make the playoffs, and Thad Young can guard Kevin Durant for 2 minutes, type deal.
What about Indiana? Because Thad Young played in Indiana.
Right. It could be Indiana.
They're missing TJ Warren. Maybe that's kind of like a reactionary news where they know he's gone.
That's just usually not how the Pacers operate. They're usually a team and an organization that's just next guy up type thing.
But a team that
so I see more of it happening in that Knicks and Heat and maybe the Lakers.
Maybe Atlanta. Thaddeus from. I mean, he played at Georgia Tech, so he's from Georgia. And they're kind of on the fringe of trying to get into that bubble for the play-in tournament. So that's kind of interesting.
Lakers and Clippers would both be good fits.
Yep.
That's a really. I'm glad he got
Brooklyn needs big guys too.
Yeah, Brooklyn's going to start acquiring random-ass people because they just need them at this point. They need some guys to work with this situation. I don't know. Maybe we see some players coming out of the woodwork here, too, from free agency.
I don't know when the NBA trade deadline is, but I think it's maybe the end of March.
It's a couple of weeks after the trade or the All-Star game usually. So
yeah.
We have moved through the coach of the year, the sixth man. We also covered the least or the most disappointing teams, I suppose.
Yeah.
Now we're going to cover the defensive player of the year. We can do a defensive, like a real season, and we can do a fantasy. I think for me, the guy that comes to mind is the sixth man, also playing, or not the sixth man, but the defensive player. It's Rudy Gobert. But then for fantasy, it's got to be Miles Turner with the blocks. I think he's averaging like 4.3 blocks. I think there's only been a few people in NBA history that have averaged over 4 blocks per game. So those are the two guys that come to me. I don't know if one of you, John or Drake, want to take away with your thoughts here, but Gobert and Turner are the two options for me.
I'll let Drake go first.
I'd like to include maybe Joel Embiid into this conversation with his blocks and rebounds and just overall defensive presence. Gobert is just an amazing defensive player, and he was last year, and he has been his whole career. Miles Turner, though, I mean, his blocks and what he does on the defensive, presence is amazing. So I don't think you could go wrong there. Do we include maybe, a Jarrett Allen in this conversation? Is Jarrett Allen giving enough blocks and rebounds? I don't know. Maybe we look at that.
The starter's workload, he could be one of those guys that just throws his name into the mix there. So that'd be kind of interesting. But I just quickly filtered by steals too to see who's got the most steals per game. Larry Nance Jr.'s up there. Drew Holiday, Marcus Smart, T.J. McConnell.
Look at all these injuries. My God,
yeah, it's sad. It's sad.
So does Jokic ever get considered for Defensive Player of the Year? He's showing up in all these stats.
So I mean, I don't want to ruin it, but I don't have him as my MVP for the real season just because the team's not doing so good. So he could be a guy that could maybe be in the defense. He doesn't get a lot of blocks or steals, but he does affect how you play the offensive side of the ball. So he could be an option there. I'm trying to think of anybody other. John, are we missing?
I got one for your asses. It's a little guy we like to affectionately call AD. Anthony Davis. He is, and especially if he hurries back from injury, I think if he misses too many games, he's out of the running for this, and he's already missed multiple weeks. So he needs to be back soon after All-Star to truly have a chance to even qualify. But he's averaging like 1.3 steals, 1.8 blocks. The Lakers are on national TV all the time. You've probably seen them play recently without Anthony Davis. They don't look like the same team, and certainly he's missing from offense, but I think it hurts their defense so much more. They've just been giving up points in droves, and Davis is having one of his better defensive seasons, and he's kind of already known as one of the better defensive players in the league.
Yeah, I think the only caveat is how many games does he actually get to play in the season?
Could we consider Andre Drummond maybe a fantasy defensive player of the year if they actually let the man play basketball? Like,
free Andre Drummond.
What are my boys doing?
Free Andre Drummond. But yeah, Anthony Davis definitely up there, I think, in terms. I wish you could
Oscar, this is a cup from a beautiful place in the Dells that we used to visit back in our pre-COVID days. So I'm just drinking a little drink out of that, a little iced tea and lemonade.
Iced tea and lemonade.
That's healthy. Good for you. A little Arnie Palmy.
That might be a segment of the shows. What's Drake drinking?
That's the second time I've been asked.
And then apparently he doesn't like your shirt. I don't know if he's
not a Cubs fan.
I would take it. I would take that to be true. But anyways,
I run into a lot of those.
Any other final thoughts on potential defensive player of the year for fantasy? I love how many blocks per game Miles Turner is getting. I know he's not an amazing fantasy player, but I think the only reason why you're probably holding on to Turner is just because of those blocks. So he's a pretty fun player. But did we miss anybody, or should we move on to the most improved player of the year, which might be my favorite topic?
I got two more things for Davis because you guys seem like dismissive of it. 1.5-ish fouls per game. Now you compare that to a Giannis or a Miles Turner or a Rudy Gobert. All those guys are at 3+ fouls a game. And now with Giannis, he gets a lot of offensive fouls, but still the point being Davis does not – his availability on the court, like in games, is helpful. That's great. Never in foul trouble, no concerns there, very, very rarely. And then he's only missed 10 games, so he's played in 23 games. The most games anyone's played in is like 35, 36. There's only 2 people who've played in 36 games. So he's not miles behind in games played. Now, he needs to play most of the second half of the season, but we'll see.
I'm surprised he's never won it before.
Do you think AD does play most of the second half of the season, though?
No. They're coasting. They got LeBron James. Come talk to me in April.
They can be the 4 seed. They don't care.
Yeah, we're not going to see him until
play some basketball.
They're gonna make the play-in tournament, Drake, and they're just gonna have the time of their lives.
Oh man, against the Pelicans, we're all gonna cry.
Any thoughts on Ben Simmons, real quick? It looks like Aiden's throwing Ben Simmons' name into the hat.
Simmons is in the top 5. I just don't think he wins the award.
And then
he got votes. He was getting votes.
He would have to have some kind of run here in the second half to, I think, make his name be a little bit more heavy. But we're getting some here in the chat room for most improved player of the year. Now, I think this is a 2-part question for me because I think it's real NBA, like most improved player, and then I think we should do fantasy. But for me, I'll throw out the names that the chat room's putting out. So Hui Kong is saying Christian Wood, who I think that's a really good candidate as well. I want to see him play a healthy second half of the season so he can really win that award. And then Oscars threw out Jeremy Grant and Terry Rozier. Now, I have Jeremy Grant listed as my most improved. I think my thoughts on Jaylen Brown, and I'm trying to think of the other player, Julius Randle. I had already such a high expectation of both those 2 players where, to me, they're already good. I don't know how much more they needed to improve to impress me, but a guy like Jeremy Grant moving to Detroit to be their featured player on a 9-win team, I do think he's improved, but I don't know. It looks like Drake. What most improved player of the year? What do you got?
Well, I mean, NBA most improved player is going to be Julius Randle.
Okay,
that's just what it's going to be. And we've discussed this before. Just because we had a little insight doesn't make it less true that Julius Randle is just finally hit this national spotlight where people are respecting him as a player. So I think he is definitely your NBA most improved player that's going to pop up on the charts.
And I think it's his first All-Star game this weekend.
It's in the All-Star game. I mean, look at how many guys don't make an All-Star game.
I think
it's insane.
Is going to be really, really strong for him. I mean, just look at his games. Like, this is his game log, just putting up 50s and 40s left and right. A bad game from him is 29, 38, 30.
The thing, I mean, this guy was doing this with the Pelicans when he was there for that half a season. It just kind of went unnoticed, but Randall's just a stud. So I would say he probably gets bumped up for the recognition and being in New York for being the most improved player.
And it's just disappointing to me because like I remember owning him when he was on the Pelicans, thinking like he's freaking good. Like I don't know why people are not acknowledging this, but I think it makes sense now that you put it that way. Is I think the NBA and a lot of casual fans didn't know how good Julius Randle was, so I think he's probably the clear answer. But John, can you beat anybody like Julius Randle? Are we going to lock him in? I know Jaylen Brown can maybe compete.
If you follow my recent Top Shot investments, and to be fair, Randall is out of my price range. But if you follow some of my Top Shot breadcrumbs, you would find that I'm a big, strong, heavy believer in Jeremy Grant for most improved player this year.
Okay. Do you want to? Is it close between Grant, Randall, anybody?
Randall actually was going to be my guy for fantasy most improved. I think he's having not only is he doing this 44 points per game in our scoring format, but he's played like the second, third, like tied for fourth or second most games played this season. He has played every game. And the Knicks aren't missing a lot of games. I think they've maybe had one COVID scratch full game from their roster or from their team. Really like Randall a lot. Drake said all the right things. I couldn't agree with any of that more. The only thing I slightly disagree with is most improved, but he's got such a great shot. I think and I wouldn't be shocked if he did it. My only other vote would be, and you guys know, I'm going to give one of my guys a shout out, but Zion would get at least a consideration from me. I don't think I would vote for him over the two guys mentioned, but I think his points have gone through the roof, and the way he's doing it, I think I saw a stat today where he was, or maybe it was yesterday, I was watching a basketball game and they flashed a stat where he's like fourth all time for guys who have I think it was taken a minimum number of field goal attempts. I think that was some part of the cutoff. And at that cutoff, no, I think it was 25 points per game. So players who had scored 25 or more points per game and also exceeded 60% field goal percentage. I'm almost positive that was it. He's one of 4 players all time to do it. He's doing it right now. I just watched him play the Bucks a week ago, and I watched him do it. He's doing it to great defenders and average defenders alike. I don't know why they're not winning. I cannot explain that. I've already made that pretty clear. But he is a freak, and I don't think that's shocking to anyone. But I think compared to last season to this season, I think he's made a massive jump.
No arguments with that. I'm going to throw a few other names into the hat. We got a couple names from the chat rooms. Aiden threw in Zach LaVine, of course, Jaylen Brown. Now, I think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has potential because he wasn't really necessarily a stud last year, but Oklahoma City gave him the keys. He could be a player that's in the top 5 of voting. Keep an eye on Dejounte Murray because I don't think a lot of people expected him to be great this year, but just check out his numbers the last handful of games he's been playing. He's been putting up 35, 48, 53, 56. He's been a real gem for the Spurs. So I just want to – he's probably not going to win the award, but I just want it's maybe a top 5 vote. But you guys want to throw in any other names? You can be totally biased, favorite players, any other names that should maybe get at least 1 vote.
I mean, Colin Sexton.
There you go.
Give Colin Sexton a vote.
Support. Jeez.
I don't have anyone else. I like Murray and I like Sexton a lot. Lots of injuries this year that have derailed some guys that I think would have had a great shot. Deandre Hunter is a guy who very much comes to mind. Really frustrated about his injury. He was having a fun season. And I'm sure there's a lot of other guys I'm disrespecting who also went down a little too early this year. CJ McCollum comes to mind as well. I think he only played 10 games, but I hate to admit it, but I put like a $5 MVP bet on him after like the first 5 or 10 games of the season. He was hot. He was hot.
So he was a top 10 fantasy player. He was hot. And then
when's McCollum coming back? Is he coming back?
He's actually. It sounds like he can be back now, but they're just going to wait after the All-Star break. So all the reports are he's ready to go.
So we're going to see a fun Portland team going forward again.
Portland's been
hopefully, yeah.
Portland's they're fifth in the West right now. They were a disappointing team, probably January, end of January.
Right.
They turned it around.
But I just see this team going forward. We're going to have some fun with Portland again.
The McCollum injury actually allowed them to get a lot of depth at the 2 and 3 guys just getting minutes, whether it's Gary Trent or Derek Jones, or I'm probably missing a couple other guys too, and they're still not playing with Nurkic yet. So Portland is a team that could get some reinforcements with McCollum and Nurkic. So keep
Nurkic, is he coming back this year?
I think yes. Maybe end of March, April for sure. It sounded like. So Portland, man. If they can somehow keep things going and get their healthy players back, I think they're a team to keep an eye on. And then Aiden threw in the chat, most improved player of the year is Cody Zeller. We'll just leave that one alone. But anyway,
okay. Kyle said leave it alone. Sorry, I have to leave it alone.
But I don't know. For me, I expected Randall to be good. I can see the NBA collective mind as a whole being, holy shit, like Randall has arrived. Like that does make sense to me. But for me, in terms of a fantasy most improved, I'm going to go with Jeremy Grant just because he was a good player last year. He was on a lot of people's, on their team, off their team kind of thing. But this year he was given the keys and he's actually playing pretty well for fantasy for Detroit there. But I don't know. Do you guys want to move on to? So we've covered coach, defense, most improved, sixth man, rookie, and MVP are left. The rookie, I think, is going to be pretty quick. I'm just going to let John do the rookie unveil here.
Oh, of course. I think we're all probably going to agree, but LaMelo Ball is my vote for rookie of the year. He's wildly impressing me every day, and I said very early on the season, I'll keep saying it because I'm so disappointed in myself, but I said earlier at one of the earliest pods, maybe even the first recorded pod in human history of this show, I said he had a broken jump shot and it would never he would fail as a result. Maybe not that extreme, but he would struggle as a result. Let's put it that way. And he's proven me so wrong. I think he's shooting over 35% from 3 right now on maybe 4+ attempts a game. That's impressive. That's really impressive. That's impressive for a veteran. For a rookie, that's wildly good. And he can do everything else we thought he could do. He's an above average to great rebounder for a guard. Probably somewhere in the good to very good range. And he's an elite passer. And he's an NBA point guard. That's hard to do at that position. To be better than most of your peers because they're all the best at it in the whole world. So I'm just really impressed with LaMelo, and the sky's the limit for this kid.
I'm super excited to see him grow. I think Charlotte just they backed into LaMelo. Like they were just giving him. They didn't have to do anything. They were just awarded LaMelo Ball, and they're looking they're looking fantastic right now. I'm excited to see what kind of pieces they add around him in the future. I mean, Terry Rozier is still young. Gordon Hayward, we'll see what they do with his contract eventually. But Devontae Graham, they got PJ Washington, a lot of fun pieces. Didn't even say Cody Zeller, but there are a lot of fun pieces around Charlotte. And
I think we're sleeping a little on Anthony Edwards. Okay. I don't know if you guys have watched this guy play basketball recently, but he's super talented. So I think the second, and I'm not disagreeing at all. I think LaMelo Ball probably ends up winning this, and he's getting all the highlights, and he's the ESPN guy. But Anthony Edwards has been a super impressive rookie and is finally starting to look the part of first overall pick. So I wouldn't sleep on him. He's going to get some great highlights with D'Angelo Russell out. Edwards is getting more minutes, but he's on a bad team, and LaMelo Ball is on potentially playoff team. that is owned by Michael Jordan. So
Attention flow.
definitely going to get the more attention. I don't think it's as clear cut. I would throw Anthony Edwards into the mix.
And
you guys can disagree with me. John's upset.
I was totally hoping you. I kind of figured you were Anthony Edwards into the mix. So I guess the guy that I'm going to his going to be Tyrese Halliburton, who he might be the fantasy guy here. But I think again with all the struggles that we talked about with Minnesota at the top of the show, they're just gonna keep putting more on his plate the rest of the way. Like, and he could just slowly it could be obvious by April that holy crap, this kid's putting up almost 25, 30 a game. Like, we have to recognize this. So I think LaMelo is for midseason. I'm gonna give it to Melo, but I think these guys are coming down the bench. Yeah. And Anthony Edwards these
are the racing sausages at Miller Park, Kyle. Okay. Yep. And LaMelo Ball, he's the cheddar worst. He got off to this huge start, but original OG Edwards, he's coming up the beer brat. So I just, if you haven't watched Anthony Edwards play a basketball game, please do. He's a pretty impressive player.
What was all I have to say is, what other podcast in the world are you getting someone in a Cubs shirt, Cubs apparel, talking about sausage races at Miller Park? This is highbrow content. Oh, well, I bet your memories from Miller Park. But I know they changed the name of the stadium. I still haven't made the change
Miller
myself.
Park, and we will never call it anything else.
I'll tell you
Agreed.
Thank you.
My parents visited this weekend, and we were driving down the highway. And I was like, look, they're changing the sign to American Family Insurance Field. But it actually looks pretty bad. Like, the sign that they're putting out, it's kind of cool. So, like, it's always going to be,
If the sign doesn't say Miller Park, Kyle, I'm not interested.
I know it's always – people are just going to call it Miller Park. But I think the branding that they're doing for it's the American Family Field. Like, it could be,
Who dropped the ball on this?
I'm so angry about it. I'm starting to call it Wrigley North.
Yes, that's what I've always called it, John. So I appreciate that.
That's our cue to move on to the next one.
No, you guys, I have to respond to Drake about basketball though, because I have watched all three of these people play in basketball games. Admittedly, less than I would like. I really wish I could watch them every single time they play.
Right.
They're amazing. I think LaMelo is head and shoulders above all two other competitors here right now. But I think Kyle said it well. It's a 3-dog race, and I think this thing's going to come down to the end of the season. One of these guys getting injured will immediately throw them out of the race because none of these guys have missed many games. Halliburton has played the fewest games of the three, and he's played 30 games, so a majority of the season. And they're all blowing me away in terms of what they're doing, especially because you know how hard it is to play guard in the NBA, not necessarily by experience, but just because you're a student of the game and you appreciate the game and you play a little 2K. All three of these guys are doing it from a tougher spot. Actually, one of the reasons I give Edwards a little negative grade in this race too is point guard is especially hard. I think point guard and center are especially hard to play as rookies. Probably a little harder than other positions. Not that, it's hard to be a rookie in the NBA regardless, but I think point guard is really hard running a team at that new level, that most advanced level. It's just, it's highbrow stuff, and very few do it year one. And all three of these guys are, honestly, Edwards needs the ball in his hands more. That's probably that's how he could get more into this race. I think he needs more touches.
I think we're starting to see that a little more.
Yes.
I would agree though. Center, when you said point guard and center is the hardest position to go from college basketball to the NBA.
Sure.
When you're playing in college, you're just outmanning and out physically in these guys, and in the NBA, shooting guards can be the size of centers at this point, Yeah. So it's that was what I kind of always thought about Ayton too. He got a bad rap because he was with Luka in that, but we're seeing Ayton this year as a true center playing with a good team finally, and so your point's right on though. Point guard and center, the hardest positions as rookies to adapt.
Center because of your body, point guard because of your mind. You know,
Yeah.
you're not out competing with these dudes physically, but the mental game in the NBA is very much another level too. But you're right. Center is so much harder.
You have to get all your teammates' cues as a point guard and all that. It's a crazy how LaMelo adapted to that so quick. Like we were seeing LaMelo assist day one. They were like, whoa. And then all of a sudden he started shooting well.
So I don't know if it matters, but I think you guys would agree LaMelo's got the best supporting cast around him. So that, to me, that almost makes what Anthony Edwards and Tyrese Halliburton are doing a little bit. It's everyone's impressive in this 3-man race, but we kind of talked about it. Anthony Edwards, they're going to keep putting on. Keep an eye on him as a dark horse. I like LaMelo, but he's got to keep it up. I think he's got to. This race is tight. He's got to keep it up to begin, pulling away. But I don't know. This was a really good draft class.
Yes.
I didn't advise drafting rookies in fantasy this year, and I'm disappointed I didn't get LaMelo Ball. I'm disappointed I didn't get Anthony Edwards or even Tyrese Halliburton. There's probably a few other rookies that I'm disappointed I didn't get or pick up in free agency, and I think all 3 of these guys are worth a fun watch as the sausage race will continue after the All-Star break. But I don't know. We're going to move on to our MVP, our fantasy MVP, and our real MVP. What do you guys want to do first? Do you guys want to do real life MVP? Like this is the NBA basketball, fantasy aside. Who is your real MVP? Or do you guys want to do fantasy first? Because that's kind of less important.
You tell us, Kyle. You just started out, and we'll follow.
I think we got to do fantasy MVP first. It's the first and foremost. This is a fantasy show, and to me, it's also less important. I'd rather speculate on who the real MVP might be. But for me, my fantasy MVP of the season is going to be Nikola Jokic. He's a consensus top 5 pick, but I don't think anyone expected him to be the number 1 player, through midseason. And again, he's not on a very great team right now. They're the 7th or 8th team in the West right now. So I think he's not going to be a leading vote getter for the real MVP. So I wanted to show him some love for the fantasy MVP, but I'll throw it to John or Drake, whoever wants to go first. What do you guys got for your fantasy MVP?
Drake, you should go.
Unless
you want me to go, I'll go with you.
I'm between a few players here.
I think I'm just gonna say Giannis. He's a pretty easy choice for fantasy MVP. I have to admit I haven't really sliced and diced it as much as I'd like. But Giannis has been having a fantastic season. He's on kind of an interesting upward swing right now too. I don't think he's necessarily going to maintain what he's doing at this moment, but I think he's going to definitely keep performing very strongly. So a little bit of future projection included in this, but I think he's still very much worthy of this award at this point in the season as well. Turnovers, regardless of whether you're like a points league or a categories league, turnovers is his biggest bugaboo. If you're in a categories league, maybe he doesn't make a whole lot of threes, and sometimes he does, but he pretty much does everything else, and it's wild.
Drake, what do you got for fantasy MVP?
So fantasy MVP, I gotta agree with you, Kyle, with the Joker. Giannis was my other guy. I kind of sold out on my boy Embiid there. It was just between the top 2 for the fantasy MVP. I think the actual MVP is going to be LeBron James this year. So that's just what the MVP award and who it's going to is LeBron James. And it's just his consistency, and probably make the argument he's had a chance to win it the last, since he's been in the league. Every year he's in the MVP discussion.
Maybe since his 3rd year onward.
Yeah. So he's an easy guy to choose, but I think LeBron is our clear-cut MVP of the league this half of the season.
I think not only for this half of the season, but just looking outward at the end of the season, the fact that Anthony Davis is going to miss at least a month of ball, that's only going to push LeBron further ahead of everybody else, because the Lakers are still going to be the 1 or the 2 seed in the West, even when Anthony Davis comes back. So I think LeBron's always an MVP candidate when he's healthy, but I think just the circumstances of Anthony Davis this year is going to make people realize that he doesn't even need Anthony Davis for the Lakers to be good. And I know John is
We got John.
been praising Anthony Davis all year, but the Lakers are still 24-11 right now. I know they're 5-5 the last few games. You put a bet on LeBron James to win the MVP, but I just think the absence of Davis for a little bit, as long as the Lakers keep on winning, that's going to push people to LeBron James. But I'm not going to unveil who my real MVP is yet. I'm going to save that for the end. But John, just what do you got? Spill the beans.
I think it's going to be – I don't think LeBron is going to win it, but he definitely has the midseason award. And it's frustrating because I have money on the line for LeBron winning MVP, and I want him to. But you said the thing that was the most important to me, Kyle. They're 5-5 over their last 10. Davis has basically played none of those games. I've watched a lot of Lakers, especially lately, and I'm just concerned. It's not that I'm not concerned about LeBron. I think they're still the favorites to win the championship. It's not like, oh my gosh, the Lakers are going into the toilet or anything. It's just without Davis, it's not as much fun. And I don't know. He's working his ass off for them to compete, and I think he's gonna take a couple games off. Does
LeBron take games off though, John?
Yes, he absolutely does. I mean, because we know what his upper limit is. You know what I mean? Like we know what playoff LeBron looks like. When he takes games off, he's 27-7-7. I mean, he's the best.
So that's what you mean by take games off.
Yeah, he's only going to be a top 10 player in the league. I'm sorry. Yeah. Very disappointing. Yeah, no, I mean,
you didn't mean he was going to sit.
No. He will never rest a game until he's 40 plus.
Right.
And even then, I don't know if he will. I'm really not sure. No, he's the favorite this season right now. I think Jokic has a great chance if the Nuggets can somehow win more games. I think Embiid, Giannis, Durant, and Harden are also very much in the mix, especially for they're a horse in the race if they have an incredible second half and some of the other horses don't do what they're supposed to do. But I think LeBron's probably the favorite in the West. I mean, Jokic should be doing better, but they need to win more games. That's probably the biggest thing you need to do to get included into this.
And I think the thing with the Nuggets too is it's not so much Jokic, it's Donovan Mitchell. Those two need to be firing on the same cylinder too. So I think it's very difficult for Jokic to win MVP just because there's another superstar on his team that I know LeBron can carry his own weight. But I just think especially if Donovan Mitchell goes down, like Jokic and the Nuggets are down. So LeBron can elevate that. I don't know if Jokic can. But I think are we in agreement that Jokic is the fantasy MVP? And then as far as real MVP, it's looking like LeBron might be the main guy here. This is mid-season too. We're not talking end of the year. But I expected you guys to say LeBron James for mid-season MVP, but I think it's Joel Embiid. And this it makes so much sense to me. Just because I watched the Sixers play some games recently, and Embiid is the entire thing. Like everything is around Joel Embiid. He's having a career season, and I think it's just time that maybe he gets a little shine here, even if it's a mid-season MVP award. I didn't want to go with the chalk answer of LeBron James, Giannis, Jokic. I think Joel Embiid right now, they got the number one team in the Eastern Conference. I think if you would have told me the Sixers would be number one East going into All-Star break, like we would have been like, maybe, like it's pretty impressive what the Sixers are doing right now. And it's all Embiid.
Yeah, I think Doc is, this is classic Doc Rivers. He's found his guy and he's built around it, and he's actually finally utilized Joel Embiid to his full potential. And that's just to be a superstar and involved in every single thing, every facet of the game. So I don't think you're off on that. That's a good, I've wanted to include him in so many categories, but I'm also very, very biased with Joel Embiid.
And that's why I knew I had to say it, because I figured you would go LeBron. But someone had to say Embiid. He's averaging a career high, almost 30 like real freaking points per game.
Yeah. I mean, how do you stop him?
He's also got.
You have to have an Anthony Davis.
And
I don't even know if that stops Joel Embiid. I mean,
it does. He's not that good against stars. That can play defense. I still go Giannis across the board for fan. I'm switching all my votes to Giannis. I keep looking at stats, and my fandom keeps chiming in, and Giannis is so nuts. So I switch all my votes to Giannis for fantasy and for regular season. He's crazy. I hope LeBron wins, though. I really do. It's the perfect narrative for the MVP, and I think we would all agree the MVP is often more narrative driven than it is like actual performance driven.
Could you make the argument that the Milwaukee Bucks are one of the more disappointing teams in the NBA right now?
You could make the argument that one of the most disappointing teams in the NBA, and you could also make the argument that they have
one of the
hottest player in the NBA right now,
right?
And that player is also a top 2-3 player in the league typically, so that's exciting. But yeah, they've disappointed until very recently for sure.
I just wanted to clarify. I get Jamal Murray and Donovan Mitchell confused all the time. When I was talking about Jokic, that's just I get them confused all the time.
We knew who you were talking about.
It just happens. But I don't know. That was our mid-season award show. I think this was probably one of the most fun shows I think we've done all year. Just because it wasn't so much fantasy, it was more real basketball talk. But we're going on a little over an hour here. I know we got some Bucks game coming on in 15 minutes. We got the Bucks and the Nuggets, two of the MVP, 5 best players in the league here.
The 2 fantasy MVPs from our
right
voting.
there. We get it tonight for free, right on national television.
I don't
what
know
a life we live.
TNT, is it on?
Isn't it on?
It's not. I have to use a special site to find this game.
Oh, no.
Why does the NBA let us down so much? How is this game not on national television?
I live in Chicago. I should be able to watch Bucks games on national TV.
I mean, I live in the state of Wisconsin, and I don't get to watch Buck games. You are closer to Milwaukee.
To be fair, I am closer to home base, but yeah, no, you do live in the right state. Regardless, it's ridiculous.
Is this why I talk about Anthony Edwards too much?
You get your 2.
We need someone talking about Anthony Edwards. If it's not Kyle and it's not me, I'm damn glad it's you, Drake, because the kid deserves all the conversation we can throw his way. He's incredible. You said it the most amazing. This rookie class is great, and I agree.
I feel like I've been talking about Anthony Edwards for the last 3 or 4 weeks. Because even like a month ago, he popped up on my waiver wire show, and I just feel like I haven't stopped talking about him on those Monday night shows. But I don't know. We're going over an hour here. This is overtime for us. Do you guys have any other final thoughts? This was a fun show. I'm glad we did this. Did we miss any awards that we could possibly give out? Did we miss anything? Any final thoughts for you two?
Humanitarian of the year, they do like something for like the dude who does the most like volunteer and charity kind of contributions and stuff, don't they?
I have no idea who that would be though.
What did Kyrie do? Didn't he do some shit?
It's probably Kyrie, to be honest. That dude has done so much and continues to.
Malcolm Brogdon, and there are a couple players in the league and also a couple players across sports that do this, but Malcolm Brogdon does this thing where he creates clean drinking water wells in impoverished areas in Africa. I'm sure. I think there's a couple specific countries, but I can't think of those on the top of my head. But he's been doing that since he was with the Bucks. I found out about that during his time in Milwaukee, and that's one of the cooler charities I've learned about recently. I'm sure he probably won't win, but I'm sure there's like a bunch of good candidates because the NBA is kind of known for being a very classy league that way. But I'll give my vote to Brogdon because I know he does some good stuff.
You know who's going to win it this year is definitely going to be LeBron. I mean, with his political, stuff going out, and in his school, the guy, said he's responsible for 500 plus kids. I mean, the guy, created an entire school district. He has transportation. He has a school. He, provides all this stuff for these people.
You're right.
Why
That's
are we
incredible.
all LeBrons?
I wish I could bet on that instead of MVP because you're spot on. Because the school started and
It started last year or 2 years ago. It started pre-COVID, I believe.
It started pre-COVID, but
Yeah.
it not too long. But it's like almost doubled in size already, or something
Yeah,
in terms of class size. Like,
is that like 570 students or something like that?
Yeah.
It provides transportation for all of them, to make sure that they can get to school. And
right,
it's
incredible.
Deserves some shine. Like the ability to bring water to a country that doesn't have clean water. Like you need water as a youth to even get to school. So both guys would be well deserving, I think, of that award. But I don't know. Any other final thoughts for you two on this episode tonight?
I can't believe I forgot LeBron started a school. That's embarrassing.
We're halfway there, guys.
We would
NBA season. We're having fun. We're watching basketball, the All-Star game. I don't know how many people watch that. I don't.
I'll tune in. I'm gonna box score watch, and we'll see what happens.
I would love to watch the skills competition. I don't even know what the skills competition is this year. Can you enlighten me?
I'd have to do a Google search.
That one might be out. I think it might just be 3. I think it might just be 3-point and dunk.
Just 3.
Oh, it needs to be right
and dunk.
I think that's.
That was always my favorite by far. Was skills competition.
I feel like it's changing all the time. Like they still haven't even announced dunk contest people, right? It's still only Obi.
I would like them to add a horse team.
It's gonna be Obi dunking by himself, and then Thibodeau yelling slurs at him from the top.
But I was going to say
more defense.
Before we went live, we said we're going to wait till the end to get John's Big Ten college basketball take.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Here we go. We're here.
Put something on
the Big Ten
screen share here, or what do you need for John's final Big Ten college basketball thoughts?
Let me say this. Michigan is in a class of their own. I think Illinois, and I obviously wasn't paying any attention. And I haven't watched a lot of games, admittedly. I've been trying to provide the people good NBA content. I've been focusing my studies on NBA. But Illinois has totally surprised me this year, and they're still surprising me. I should start buying in at some point because they're very impressive. But Wisconsin's going to win it because they're the best. And I think they're going to win. I think they're going to go to the Final Four this year. And then anything could happen. I mean, I'm not going to predict a championship on a podcast, but I'm not ruling it out on a podcast either. That's my Big Ten take.
Interesting. Have you watched Wisconsin play?
John is never going to have a college basketball take again, is he?
Watch
one time, John's one-time only fantasy or college basketball take.
Tires from college basketball takes. But
I'd be more interested in Drake's if he wants to share with us.
I just want to say, I think you hit I watched Michigan play this weekend. They're good. Michigan is going to get probably one of my Final Four votes for sure at this point. And I think Illinois, it wouldn't surprise me if Illinois and Michigan both make the Final Four. But there's some NBA talent on these teams. Drake probably can make a case for Iowa to make a Final Four Elite 8 run. I know they have some players there that are kind of fun.
I would say I disagree with you guys a little that Illinois is not in its own tier, and Illinois is definitely in this tier with Ohio State,
Michigan's
Iowa, Wisconsin, Michigan State, that kind of deal. But you guys aren't far off. Illinois is. If you follow the Big Ten where it started, it's insane. Wisconsin started as the number 4 team in the country. Started out, we were 2 weeks in, and Iowa was number 4 in the country. And then all of a sudden, these teams start playing Big Ten ball, and that's where the cards, kind of fall out. Michigan is by far the superior. Ohio State, I thought was a little better, but they took a loss to Michigan, then Iowa, Wisconsin. They're if they're on, they're a very good team. Their shooting has just been so off this last month, which is very troubling. But Michigan State's a team that's coming on now for the Big Ten. So I don't think
you never can
I
count
think
Izzo
there's
out.
just this group, and then there's Michigan.
Yep.
And that's just what usually the Big Ten is. I mean,
I think the Big Ten is like this. It's like its own pool of they're just sharpening each other, because Big Ten basketball is a little bit different from ACC, from SEC, from all these other. It's like I kind of view it as like for football, like Big Ten football is all about like the trenches and like running the ball and stuff. That's kind of what like Big Ten basketball is.
yes.
So
They love to get to play these tournament games because they get to go out and run and just go back and forth. And some of the teams can't do it, but there's a lot of Big Ten teams that have the athletic skill and the everything to match up with these teams. That's why you kind of see these Big Ten teams start doing well in tournaments, and surprising because they've been beating each other all year, and then they get into the tournament.
I think Michigan is probably a lock. If I'm just filling out a bracket right now, Michigan's probably a lock to the Final Four. But I do think the Big Ten has a path to 2 teams into the Final Four. I don't know who it is, but man, I like Illinois. I've really the only 2 full games I've watched for college basketball this year were both Illinois and Wisconsin. Like I've watched both those games. Wisconsin can't handle what Illinois is bringing, and I don't think a lot of other teams can too. With Coburn, and I'm forgetting the superstar's name, but. It's Illinois is fun to watch. I think they can make a run, but Michigan right now, that game is probably happening at 8:00 right now. Ohio State in Michigan, is that correct? I'll have to double check, but I don't know. We're in overtime. Any other final thoughts before we sign off for the night?
Thanks for following, guys. We love the questions and everything. We love talking basketball. We could do this all night, but Kyle's got a blazer on, so he's obviously got important things going on.
There's some takeout Olive Garden in the mix. All I have to say is basketball is my favorite sport, and I love the way they dribble up and down the court.
Awesome. That's going to do it for us for our Tuesday night hangout. We'll be back next Tuesday. I don't know what we'll talk about, but maybe we'll have some all-star potential thoughts and some player. Maybe we'll make a list of players to watch for the second half of the season.
We will break down every single Big Ten roster. That's what we will do for you guys.
I don't know. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're almost to 200 subscribers. Hook us up. We'll see you guys in another video. Thanks. Peace.